For the last couple of years, every responsible person in our profession has described AI the same way. They say it's a tool that supports the human. The human does the work, and AI assists around the edges. Human first, AI in support. And that was the right way to say it because it kept judgment where it belongs and it kept people from doing anything reckless. But I've been sitting with something else since I built my original talk on this, and I want to say it out loud, even though it's going to make some people uncomfortable. I think that order is about to flip. I think in the intermediate term, the firms that win are going to run an AI first, human supported model. Not human first with AI helping, AI first with the human supporting. The AI does the first pass on the volume, the drafting, the research, the summarizing, the routing, and the human moves up the stack to supervise, to catch, to decide, and to own the result. And before anybody panics and turns this episode off, let me be very clear about what I'm not saying. I'm not saying the human goes away. I'm not saying judgment gets automated. I am saying the human seat in the workflow moves. You stop being the person who types the first draft of everything and you become the person who directs and approves everything. That is a profound shift in how a small firm operates, and today I want to talk about how you actually do it well, how you talk to these systems so they produce something worth approving, and the compliance reality you absolutely cannot ignore as AI moves from the edge of your firm to the center of it. Hey friends, welcome to the Thrive Advisor podcast, where we help tax advisory firm owners build practices that are sustainable and profitable. I'm your host, Aaron Siegel. Last episode, we built the architecture. We picked a hub, we cleaned it, and we ran spokes out to where the work happens. And I mentioned that a lot of those spokes are powered by AI. I also gave you a guardrail at the end. The system drafts and you decide. Today, I want to go deeper on both halves of that. How do you actually get AI to draft something good? And what does it really mean for the human to be the one who decides, especially when the law has something to say about it? So this is the how to actually use it episode. And then the part nobody wants to talk about, but everybody needs to, the compliance episode. Stick with me to the end because the second half is genuinely one of the most important and least discussed conversations in our entire field right now. And I'm going to give you my honest opinion on it, not just both sides. Let me develop the thesis, because the distinction matters enormously and most people get it wrong in one of two directions. The reckless direction is to hear AI first and think that it means that you let the machine run and you rubber stamp whatever comes out. That is not AI first. That is negligence with extra steps, and in our profession, it's the kind of thing that ends careers. The timid direction is to keep doing everything yourself by hand and occasionally ask AI to polish a sentence. That is the human first model we've been living in, and the problem with it is it doesn't scale, and it leaves enormous capacity on the table. AI first is the path between those two. Here's the cleanest way I can describe it. In a human-first firm, the default starting point for any task is a person doing it from scratch. In an AI-first firm, the default starting point for any task is the system producing a first version, and the person's job is to review, correct, and decide. The work still gets done to a professional standard. A human still signs off on everything that matters, but the sequence is inverted. The blank page is now the machine's problem, not yours. You spend your time on the part that actually requires your license and your judgment, which is evaluating and deciding, not generating. And the reason I think this is coming, whether we like it or not, is simple. The economics are going to demand it. When one advisor running an AI-first system can serve the client load that used to take 3 people, the firms that make the shift will be able to charge less, or serve more, or work less, or some combination of all 3. The firms that refuse will be competing against the math. I'm not celebrating that. I'm just telling you what I see coming. The good news, and this is the through line of everything I teach, is that the human judgment piece does not shrink in value. It gets more valuable because it becomes the scarce part. So the move is to not resist the shift. The move is to make the shift while keeping your judgment firmly in the driver's seat. Let me make this concrete because AI first stays abstract until you picture an actual day. In the old model, a client emails a question, and you sit down with a blank screen and you write the answer from nothing. In the AI first model, that same email comes in and the first draft of the response is already waiting for you, generated from the client's file and your firm's positions because you've built a spoke that does that. Your job is not to write the email. Your job is to read the email, catch the one nuance the model missed, sharpen the part that matters, and send it under your name. The research memo, the engagement summary, the meeting recap, the first cut of the analysis, all of it arrives pre-drafted, and you are the editor and the decider rather than the typist. Multiply that across every small task in a week, and you can feel where the hours come back. You're not doing less thinking, you're doing less typing, and almost all of your time goes to the judgment calls that actually matter. Okay, if AI is going to do the first pass on real work, then how you talk to it stops becoming a parlor trick and becomes a core operating skill. And here's the thing I see constantly. Most people are getting garbage out of these tools, and they've concluded the tools are overhyped. They're not. The person is just using it wrong. There are two ways to use AI, and only one of them actually works. I call them the vending machine and the collaborator. The vending machine approach is how almost everybody starts. You walk up, you insert a prompt, you expect a finished product to drop out, and then you judge the tool by what falls out of the slot. Write me a follow-up email to a client. And out comes something technically correct and completely useless. Generic, soft, sounds like every other email on earth. You read it, you think, this is junk, and you go write it yourself. And you conclude AI cannot do your job. But you did not collaborate with it. You used it like a vending machine, and a vending machine gives everybody the same candy bar. The collaborator approach is entirely different. You brief it like you would brief a sharp new team member. You give it the context, you set the constraints, you show it examples, and you go back and forth. You treat it as a thinking partner you're directing, not a button you're pushing. And the difference in output is not small. It is the difference between something you throw away and something you actually use. So let me give you the framework for doing that because it's learnable and it's fast. I teach this as the 4 C's of modern prompting. Some of you have heard about me talk about CRIT in the past, so context, role, instructions, and task. This is the evolution of that. Same posture, sharper mechanics. It's the 4 C's: context, constraints, concrete, and conversation. The first C is context. Tell it the situation. Who you are, what the background is, and what you're trying to accomplish, what you've already tried. The model knows nothing about your world until you tell it. The vending machine prompt was, write a follow-up email. The context version is, I'm a tax advisor. I just had a 30-minute discovery call with a prospect who runs a 12-person agency. Here's what they're struggling with, and here's the engagement that I'm hoping to land. You've just transformed the task by telling the AI where it stands. The second C is constraints. Tell it the rules of the output. How long should it be? What tone? What to avoid? What to optimize for? 200 words, warm but direct, no jargon, reference 2 specific things from our call, don't talk about pricing yet, and optimize for making this person feel understood. Constraints are where the output goes from generic to yours because constraints are how you bake your judgment and your voice into the machine's work. The third C is concrete. So give it real examples and real data. This is the one people skip, and it's the highest leverage one. If you want an email that sounds like you, paste in an email you actually wrote. If you want a summary in a certain format, show it the format. Concrete examples do more to shape the output than any amount of description because you're showing instead of telling. And the fourth C is conversation. Don't one-shot it. Don't expect the first thing out of the AI to be the final thing. The first draft is the start of the conversation, not the end of it. You react, you redirect, you say the second paragraph is too soft, sharpen it, or you're making a promise we can't keep there, pull it back. The magic is in the iteration. The vending machine user quits after the first bad output. The collaborator is just getting started. Now picture those 2 outputs side by side. The vending machine email, the one from write me a follow-up, opens with, thank you for taking the time to speak with me today, and limps along to a soft, let me know if you have any questions. Forgettable. The collaborator email, built with the 4 C's, opens by naming the prospect's exact problem, references the specific pressure they're under, proposes a concrete first step, and it ends with a real call to action. Same task, same tool, wildly different result. The only variable was the human who briefed it. And that points at the piece underneath the 4 mechanics, the thing that actually makes them work. I call it the 5th C, and it's collaboration. Not as a technique, but as a disposition, a posture you bring to the tool. The 4 C's are the mechanics. The 5th C is the mindset that you're working with something, not commanding something. The people who get the most out of AI are not the ones with the cleverest prompts. They are the ones who treat it like a capable, tireless, slightly naive junior colleague that they are actively managing. They brief it well, they review its work honestly, they correct it, and they push it to do better. the same way you would develop a real team member. That disposition is what separates the advisors who think AI is magic from the ones who think it's useless. The tool is the same, the relationship to it is everything. One more piece on usage before we get to the part that keeps people up at night, and this one is going to sound familiar because it's the exact same discipline as hub and spokes, just pointed at your AI. The instinct when all of this is new and exciting is to sign up for everything. A little ChatGPT, a little Claude, a little Gemini, 3 other specialized tools you saw in a webinar, spreading yourself thin across every provider. That's the same mistake as buying 17 tools with no hub. The better move is to go deep, not wide. Pick one primary provider and actually learn it. Get fluent, then expand within that one ecosystem because the major providers are not single products anymore. One provider gives you a chat interface, a coding agent, a browser agent, a spreadsheet agent, file and task automation for the non-developer, and an API that runs things in the background. That is one relationship, one set of terms, one security posture, 6 or more services to do work on. Going deep on one provider beats going shallow on 6. For the same reason a hub beats a pile of disconnected tools. You build real competence instead of scattered dabbling. You keep your data flowing through one controlled environment instead of 5, and as we're about to discuss, you have exactly one set of terms and security settings to get right instead of a sprawl of them. Depth is a discipline, and it pays off in capability and in compliance at the same time. All right, here's the part nobody wants to talk about, and it's the reason that I made you stick around. As AI moves to the center of your firm, you've got to deal with Section 7216. And I'm not going to give you a wishy-washy both sides treatment. I'm going to lay out the debate honestly and then tell you where I actually land. Quick grounding for anyone who needs it. Section 7216 is a criminal provision in the tax code. It makes it a crime for a tax return preparer to knowingly or recklessly disclose or use a taxpayer's information for anything beyond preparing their return, unless you have the taxpayer's written consent or a specific exception applies. The penalties are real. We are talking criminal exposure, fines, even potential jail time per violation, plus separate civil penalties. This is not a parking ticket. So when you feed client information into an AI system, the question on the table is whether that counts as a disclosure and what you're obligated to do about it. There are 2 camps. Let me give you both fairly. The strict camp says this: treat every general purpose AI provider as a third party you are disclosing to. Name each one specifically in your 7216 consent. Repaper your consents every time you change tools. And sanitize the data before it ever goes in. Strip out the identifying details with the hard rule that sanitization, which happens in the cloud, is not really sanitization at all. It's a conservative posture. It keeps your risk surface very small. And there's nothing wrong with choosing it. If that's where your gut sits, then sit there proudly and document it. The pragmatic camp, and I'll tell you straight, that's where I've landed, reasons differently. And I want to be really clear about what the pragmatic position is and is not, because it gets caricatured as skip the paperwork, and that's not it at all. Start with what we absolutely should do. Get a general 7216 consent. Full stop. I am not arguing against disclosure. I am arguing for it. Build a clear general consent into your engagement process that tells the client you use technology providers and service providers in the course of doing their tax and advisory work. And here's the piece I really want you to take away. Maintain an appendix, a living list of your data processors, the actual providers in your stack, and make it available to clients. Let them request it anytime, or honestly, just post it on your website where anyone can see it. That's radical transparency. The client can know exactly who's touching their data, and you keep that list current as your tools evolve. What I don't think makes any sense is repapering every client, re-signing fresh consents every single time a model gets updated or you swap one tool for another or a vendor adds an AI feature. Think about what we're actually doing here. We are doing tax preparation, advisory, and planning. That is the engagement. That is the box of what we do. We are not selling the client's data to a bank. We are not handing it to an outside marketer. We are not using it for some purpose outside of the work they hired us to do. The processors change, but the purpose never does. So a general consent plus a maintained transparent processor list covers the reality far better than a stack of one-off consents that are out of date the moment a vendor pushes an update. And the security side is what makes that posture defensible rather than lazy. The decisive factor is not whether a tool is labeled AI. It's how the data is actually handled. The real risk is whether the provider's terms allow your input to be used to train their models. If you are on terms where your data is not trained on, not retained and properly secured, the actual risk looks completely different from someone pasting client data into a free consumer chatbot. So the pragmatic read is get the general consent, publish and maintain the processor appendix, use providers on terms that protect the client data, sanitize it where it's practical, and keep the whole thing inside the scope of the work the client already hired you to do. It's a defensible, transparent posture, and the risk stays small because you've controlled the two things that actually matter, which are the data handling and the honesty with your client about it. Now, let me give you the argument that pushed me towards the pragmatic side because I think it's the part most people have not thought through. Look at the tax tools you already use: the bookkeeping tool, the prep software, the research platform, the workflow system. The vast majority of them are now building AI features directly into their products, and almost all of those features are built on the same handful of foundation models from the same 2 or 3 major providers. So when you use your AI-powered tax software, your client's data is already flowing to that software vendor and then to the foundation model provider underneath it. You are arguably disclosing to more parties, not fewer, and you may have less visibility into exactly how each one handles the data. So here's the conclusion I've come to: the purist position, where you avoid using a major AI provider directly but happily use a stack of tax tools that are quietly piping the same data to those very same providers, is not actually more compliant. It just feels more compliant because the AI is hidden behind a familiar logo. I've started to think that the cleaner play in many cases is to choose one major provider, go to them directly on enterprise terms where your data is not used for training and retention is controlled, dial your security in tight, and know exactly where your data is going rather than scattering it across a dozen black boxes. Fewer parties, more visibility, and terms you actually chose. That to me is the more honest version of compliant, not the less. But, and this matters, that only works if you actually do your security work. The pragmatic position is not consumer chatbot free tier paste away. It's replicate the protections the serious tax tools negotiated and prove you did. That means business or enterprise terms that contractually bar training on your data. It means the security basics the IRS itself spells out: the multi-factor authentication, the encryption, the firewall, the VPN, the whole baseline. It means your written information security plan, your WISP, actually addresses AI, because under the FTC safeguards rule, you're required to have that plan, and it needs to reflect the tools you really use. And it means you carry cyber liability coverage that is genuinely in force. The liberal read buys you flexibility, but it bills you in diligence. You don't get the flexibility without doing the work. So here's my real advice, and it's the one line from my original talk I want you to keep. Pick where you sit and document why. The strict camp and the pragmatic camp are both populated by smart, careful practitioners who reach different defensible conclusions. The only truly indefensible position is the one most firms are actually in right now, which is no position at all. People feeding client data into whatever tool is handy with no general consent, no processor list, no documented reasoning, no security plan that mentions AI. It's just vibes. That is the dangerous place. Wherever you land between strict and pragmatic, land there on purpose. Get the consent, keep the list, write down your reasoning, and build the security to back it up. And that brings us all the way back to the guardrail, which matters more in an AI-first model, not less. AI drafts, you decide. No matter how far you push your automation, no matter how much the machine does the first pass, the judgment stays human and the responsibility stays yours. The AI did it has never protected anybody, and it will never do it. The AI did it has never protected anybody, and it never will. That is exactly why I'm not afraid of the AI first shift and why you shouldn't be either. AI first does not mean human absent. It means the human climbs to a higher rung. You stop spending your day generating drafts and you start spending it exercising the judgment that no model can take from you and that no client can get anywhere else. The firms that understand that distinction are going to be more profitable and more protected. The ones that confuse AI first with judgment free are going to learn a very expensive lesson. Be the first kind. Here's the whole episode in one breath. The model is flipping from human first to AI first, but human supported, where the machine does the first pass and you move up to directing and deciding. To make that work, you stop using AI like a vending machine and start using it like a collaborator with the 4 C's: context, constraints, concrete, and conversation, powered by the 5th C, the collaborative disposition. You go deep on one provider instead of shallow on 6. And you take a deliberate documented position on 7216. Get a general consent, keep a transparent and current list of your data processors, and put the security and the WISP behind it, because as AI moves to the center, compliance is not optional. Your permission for the week is to stop treating AI as either magic or menace. It is a capable junior colleague that you direct and that you are responsible for. That is a posture you already know how to hold because you've already managed people before. So here's your one move, 2 parts this week. First, take one task you do from scratch every week and run it through the 4 C's instead. Brief AI like a colleague and see what comes back. And second, the uncomfortable one, go look at whether your WISP says a single word about AI and whether you've ever written down your 7216 position. If the answer is no, you just found the most important hour of work you'll do this month. Next episode, we come back to the foundation of the whole operating system, the thing every system and every number we've talked about ultimately rests on, which is scope, what you do, what you don't, and where the edges are. If you're ready to build systems with advisors who get it, come join us in the Thrive Advisor Collective on School. The link is in the show notes. If this has sparked a light bulb for you, share this episode with another advisor who is either terrified of AI or pasting client data into AI with no plan, because both of them need to hear this one. You've been listening to the Thrive Advisor podcast. Work smarter, serve better, thrive always. We'll see you next time.